Good morning. Today we're going to be looking at Chapter 14, Section 2 that looks at unemployment, something that you're probably hearing a lot about in the news and on the unemployment rate. So this should be very relevant to everything that you are hearing around you. Additionally, hopefully you're listening to this. It will make your worksheet that you need to do today so much easier. When we look at the 4 different types of unemployment, or 5 according to your book, the reasonings given underneath those slides should be the reasonings that you're using when you're doing your worksheet. So I'll point that out as we go through. All right, let's start with what it means to be unemployed. There are a couple of conditions that must be met to be considered unemployed. The first one is you have to want to work, and you have to actively be seeking work. It's not enough to just want to work. You've got to be also looking for a job. So within the past month, if you've been looking for a job and you cannot find one, you are considered unemployed. You are also considered unemployed if you work for your family, but you don't receive any pay and you're working about less than 15 hours per week. Another condition where you could be considered unemployed is if you worked for less than an hour for pay. But the big things with being considered unemployed are you have to want to work and actively be seeking work. So if you right now in your life, you don't want a job, you haven't been looking for a job, you technically are not unemployed yet. All right, so let's move on to look at, how we calculate the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or the BLS, which is a government agency. To calculate mathematically, what we would do is we take the number of unemployed and we would divide it by the total number in the civilian workforce. Civilian means non-military. All right, now in terms of the unemployment rate and how accurate is it? It is not 100% accurate for multiple reasons. There are some limitations to our unemployment rate that do make it inaccurate. A basic reason it's not going to be 100% accurate is some people do not actually file for unemployment. It could be a point of embarrassment, or they don't know how to go about doing it, so they don't. So as a result, our unemployment rate will be understated. Another reason that the unemployment rate is also not 100% accurate is the fact that we do not count discouraged and part-time workers in the unemployment rate. So let's look at those 2 types of workers. What is a discouraged worker? A discouraged worker is someone who would love to have a job, has previously been looking for a job, but as of now has stopped. They've become frustrated that they can't find one, so they've kind of given up. So they are not counted in our unemployment rate. Also, part-time workers are not counted. So if you work part-time but you wish you had a full-time job, or you needed a full-time job in order to be able to take care of your family or pay your bills, you are considered employed. Part-time workers, even when you choose not to, are still considered employed. So again, if you look at not counting discouraged workers and the fact that we do count part-time workers in our employment rate, we're going to get a number for the employment rate that's really lower than what it should be. So those are significant limitations. Let's look at, we're going to go with 4 types of unemployment. Your book gives you 5. We're going to roll technology or technological unemployment into structural unemployment. So the first type of unemployment is frictional unemployment. This is where you are temporarily between jobs. Most of the time, this is because of a choice that has been made. For example, if you choose to move from one city to another, or one state to another, so you have to quit your job and then look for another job where you moved, you would be considered frictionally unemployed. Frictional unemployment tends to be short-term, and it tends to be voluntary. In addition to a choice to move your job, another reason that you could be considered frictionally unemployed is if you were looking for your first job. So those of you who have a job, when you went out looking for your first job, at that point you were frictionally unemployed. For those of you who have not had a job yet, when you finally enter the workforce, While you're waiting to find that first job, while you're looking, you would be considered frictionally unemployed. The reasons on these coming slides, your bullet points, this is what you would want to use as your reasoning in your worksheet that you're doing today. With frictional unemployment, you can't get rid of it. It's not able to be eliminated in a free market system. Some of you already in your short lifetime have left one job for another. We have that freedom. And because we have the freedom to leave our job to go search for another one or to move to a different place in our country, we can't get rid of frictional unemployment. It will always be there. It's one of the reasons why our unemployment rate will never be zero, because we always have that right to change jobs. And not everybody in our country is going to be happy at the exact same time with the job that they hold. So our first type of unemployment is frictional. This one is less serious because it is considered short-term. Structural unemployment, this is the one that government worries more about. Structural unemployment, and this is where technological unemployment would fit, is due to some major way our economy functions that's now different. So the skills that were once useful in our economy are no longer useful. An example, that's why there's an ATM picture on this. An example would be before ATMs, we had all of the bank tellers, human beings. You had to go into the bank, or you had to do the drive-through where you interacted with another human. As those folks were replaced by machines, we now had unemployment of bank tellers because their skills no longer match what we needed because technology replaced them in the form of an ATM machine. Your book gives you the example of a movement away from horse and buggy to cars, and all of the jobs that were associated with horse and buggies, they no longer match as we moved into Henry Ford and the automobile industry developing with the assembly line. Another cause for structural unemployment are mergers or just different cost-cutting moves that businesses employ to try to save money. When companies merge, they tend to lay people off because you don't need that many workers anymore. Another reason for structural unemployment is basically just a change in consumer taste. So industries that were once popular and that gave people jobs, as we no longer have demands in those areas, those industries die off and those people lose their job. Another reason we have structural unemployment would be the government and how it changes the way it operates. The book gives you an example of military bases closing. As military bases closed, we didn't need so many of those jobs in our military. Some people were able to move to a different base, but some people just became unemployed. This is a much more serious problem for the government because as people's skills don't match, we now need to reskill people. And the government does get involved to try to help structural, where it doesn't help with frictional unemployment, because we've got to reskill people. Some of you know that ROP not only works in high schools, but it also works with the community as a reskilling opportunity and reskill education to be able to help people match the skills that are in demand in our economy. The last two types of unemployment are pretty self-explanatory. The first one is cyclical unemployment. That has to do directly with the business cycle. So if you lose your job as a result of a recession or a depression, you would be considered cyclically unemployed. It is only due to the different phases of the business cycle that you would not have a job to be considered cyclically unemployed. So the key there is recession or depression. The last type of unemployment would be seasonal, and as it sounds like, it has to do with the seasons of the year, weather. And as weather affects demand for certain jobs, you can lose your job over a season. We don't see it as much in Southern California. We don't have a lot of changes in weather so that are drastic enough to eliminate certain jobs. Maybe if you look at lifeguards, there are certain times of the year where we have just a very baseline number of lifeguards, and then the others must kind of reapply the next summer. In East Coast, a lot of times construction workers will lose jobs in the winter. There's not a demand for buildings to be built in the dead of winter, so they might lose their jobs. So those are our four types of unemployment: frictional, cyclical, structural, seasonal. You can't get rid of frictional and you can't get rid of seasonal. So it goes to explain, kind of our lead into the next slide, that full employment is usually considered to be around 4 to 5%. It's never going to be zero because we can't get rid of frictional unemployment because we are a market economy that allows people to always be free to leave a job to find another one. And also we always will have, due to seasons of the year, unemployment directly related to weather. So we do try to use all of our resources as efficient as possible to keep our unemployment as low as we can, but it's really never going to get to zero for those two reasons. So that's our look at unemployment today. Hopefully that helped clarify and will make your worksheet you're doing today a lot easier. So have a good day, and I'll check in with you in a couple days.